Welcome to the Scottsdale Top Docs podcast, where we share a mission to improve access to care and prevention, as well as planning for the future. Our goal is to help people live healthier, happier, more informed lives. We believe that healthcare isn't a job, but a calling to serve, and the best care begins with conversation. Now on to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Scottsdale Top Docs podcast. I'm Dr. Amber Enright. I'll be your host today, and I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing my friend, Dr. Mona Amini. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Amber. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we're friends already, but I wanted to ask you a few questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Did I get it all right this time?
You did.
Okay, I had to do a few takes of that one. But I really wanted to interview you today to talk about some just interesting topics that have come up lately. A lot of people are talking about dating online. A lot of people are talking about relationship health, men, women, business owners, regular old, people, married people. Everybody's talking about dating profiles, all of these things. And obviously relationships are, I think, why we're put here. We're social creatures as humans. And so I wanted to ask a professional what the differences in those levels of mental health and treatment really are. And maybe start with psychiatry. How does someone become a psychiatrist? What's the level of education there? And what can you do that all those other professionals cannot?
Sure. So psychiatrists are medical doctors. They can be a doctor of osteopaths, so they might be DOs, they might be MDs or medical doctors. There are also nurse practitioners or physician's assistants. So when I'm referring to a psychiatrist in this space, what I'm referring to is either an MD or a DO. We have gone through at least 4 years of undergraduate school. We then go through another 4 years of medical school. We then thereafter go through at least 4 years of what's called specialty training, which is residency training. Beyond that, there might be subspecialty fellowship training as well. So all in all, at least 10 to 12 years or more of your life is dedicated to serving the community in this manner. And the passion that I have about this is that I went into medicine for the very reason of seeking psychiatry and mental health as my dedicated route.
Wow.
So
like for yourself, and you already knew I'm going that way.
I already knew that I was going that way. And in the course of residency, and actually before residency, I should say, in medical school, you have 4 years. Your first 2 years are dedicated to more in-class training, the academic route, book studying, et cetera. Your third and fourth year is more on the front line. So you're actually having rotations of different types of modalities of treatment. You're in every different specialty. You might be in your OB-GYN rotation and delivering babies, with your attending physicians for 8 weeks or so at a time. So you get to see all aspects of medicine. And for that very reason, we see everything about medicine. And you really dive into everything in terms of specialty in healthcare. For psychologists, so now psychologists have a different spectrum. They're not a medical doctor. They are called a doctor because they have a PhD or a PsyD, so PSYD. They are a doctorate level of education, and mostly they've done a lot of research in the realm of whatever specialty that they're interested in. It could be adult ADHD. I've seen researchers that are very much in tune to autism or neurodivergence, for example. And then later on, they might open themselves to practicing either in the academic realm, or they might have their own private practice for therapy, talk therapy. They've also done an undergraduate, they've had master's program number of years, then they have doctorate level education. And so ultimately, they also have a large level of, lengthy education. Therapists are counselors or therapists. They are normally around bachelor's or master's level educated. They are certified in their industry and specialties as well. And they have a multitude of different specialties. There could be a licensed a licensed social worker, for example, a licensed marriage and family therapist that is only dealing with, more LMFT issues. divorces or things along those lines with children. And so they don't have that medical background or training on the latter two. MDs, DOs, the nurse practitioners, for example, we dive into a lot of the significant, severe things that are more mental health and mental wellness related. So in my spectrum of my own experience, I've done inpatient psychiatry, consultations on the medical floors, geriatric, et cetera. And in that spectrum, I've diagnosed schizophrenia, catatonia, the most severe of the population in terms of, what I can help and dive in with. And usually that is with medications, but we also are trained in talk therapy and psychotherapy modalities as well. We also use interventional methods. So you're looking at right now in healthcare, you're seeing a lot of trends in psychedelics, ketamine, TMS, ECT, all of these interventional modalities. And that's what psychiatrists are able to use.
Okay. So tell me a little bit again. I know you mentioned ketamine and some of these, more higher interest right now forms of psychotherapy, I guess. Or is it
more
not?
Interventional psychiatric treatments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you is that something that your psychiatrist leads you to, or that if you have questions and you're interested in, you ask a psychiatrist about? Because it sounds like there are a lot of professionals that are actually out there doing it.
Right.
And so how does the public know if it's safe to do? And then also, is it something that they can feel comfortable asking a provider about?
That's actually an excellent question, because when I first started out in this was back in residency. So think about like 08, 09 time. So ketamine was kind of new, up and coming. It was more NIH grant funded. There was not really anybody doing it out there besides maybe an academic center or somebody that was NIH funded in town. And so everything was very, think about when you go into your primary care office or a specialist's office and they have these, hey, we have this special research project going on. And if you want to sign up to be a patient as a test patient, sign up and you can get potentially paid, for example. That was what was going on back in the day. So I actually had patients that did that. And some of them did really well with the ketamine, some of them did not. Now I've seen across the spectrum in that these ketamine clinics are not necessarily being led by a psychiatrist. It might be an anesthesiologist. It might be other types of medical doctor specialists. And there usually should be oversight of a psychiatrist, because what we have to think about is, number one, you're going into ketamine treatment for a reason. There's sometimes it's trauma-based, underlying issues, usually depression, active or passive suicidal ideations or thought processes. So you want to have some sort of, collaboration and guidance with your psychiatrist involved, not just having a direct-to-consumer model from the patient guiding themselves into that treatment program. And I think that has been the push lately, and I've been happy about that. But originally what I was seeing was the trends were more so on the other end of the spectrum, and clinics opening up and saying, hey, we do ketamine and all of this offerings, without having kind of the psychiatric aspect and background. Because once the patient is done and complete with their treatment protocols, they'll still need psychiatric treatment. They'll still need therapy. And they have to still kind of peel back some of those layers that they may have been working on historically, that need to now be kind of the more mainstay focus on their mental health.
So I guess looming question, is ketamine really unsafe for someone if they haven't had a psychiatric assessment? Could it be?
I am, in my approach, and my conservative approach is really, it's almost like taking a step back when you want to go into gastric bypass, or if you even want to pursue liver transplant or some sort of organ transplant, you have to have a psychiatric evaluation or a psychological evaluation for that. And so the same thing is my take on that, in that you should have a psychiatric evaluation beforehand. You also, many insurance companies or whoever is kind of doing the pay structure for this treatment protocol, they will need a psychiatric eval as an initial evaluation to even see, are you a patient that this modality of treatment is going to work? Number
Good.
one, is this going to cause any other kind of latent side effects? Is it going to worsen because it could cause hallucinations? It could cause potential psychosis. There's a multitude of, different rabbit hole side effects that we can go into on that. But there's definite need to have a psychiatric eval for sure.
Wow.
For sure.
Okay, well, good to know.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think that sometimes people get into oh my gosh, well, I should seek this. It could help me.
Yeah.
Or they're just into having new experiences. And I think that it could be really dangerous when you don't know what you should get beforehand. And obviously, one of the problems with some of these actual medical interventions is that there are street drugs available. And unfortunately, that's something that people will seek out because they think it might help them.
Right.
And that could potentially lead them to a not good outcome that they could have actually had a safe treatment for.
Correct.
So anyway, thanks for talking about that a little bit.
Of course.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We wanted a quick commercial break to talk to you about Pain Week. Pain Week is going to be hosted in Las Vegas this year, September 3rd through the 6th, where Dr. Shana Johnson is a speaker. Dr. Shana, tell us a little bit about Pain Week 2024.
Pain Week is a comprehensive pain conference. It's really stands out in that it has a very holistic approach to pain. So there's not just going to be doctors talking about medications and procedures, but there's going to be psychologists talking about their latest approaches to pain care, pharmacists, therapists. Pain Week 2024 is a comprehensive, forward-thinking approach to pain management. I look forward to seeing you in Vegas 2024.
So in your practice, it sounds like you actually treat a lot of executives. You also treat a lot of female entrepreneurs and mothers and some amazing people. So tell me a little bit about that end, and what are these people primarily coming in to ask you about?
So I think the primary concern, and it's across the whole spectrum, I think the biggest theme is depression, anxiety, and their work-life balance. And what I learned just the other week, I was at an engagement in an event, and one person was talking about, let's not talk about work-life balance, let's call it work-life happiness. And that resonated with me. And I was like, I'm going to use that from now on, really, with my patients, because it's not about, right now, society is pushing hustle mode. It's all about hustle culture. You're seeing it on TikTok. You're seeing it across social media. This is how much you need to make to be happy. These are all of the trends that you need to, touch in your goals and all of these things in mind. And then this is, you can become a millionaire overnight. That's not how the world works. We all know
That's
that.
Cute.
And especially upon, being an entrepreneur, if you don't have the stable networks and the stable, family environment, your partner, and all of the support systems behind you, it's really hard to be successful. And you have to put your energy into what you're doing, but also not burn yourself out. And I've seen this spectrum of these really high functioning, really high performing individuals. And it's gender neutral. It's not just females. It's not just males. It's all across the spectrum, across the board, that they are in need of just some support system. And sometimes it's something as simple as, I need somebody tertiary to look at everything on the outside and say, am I doing something wrong? What am I doing incorrectly? How do I fit in my family life? How do I have better intimacy relations with my spouse or my partner?
Ooh.
How do I, how do I get to a point where I feel like I can function in my day-to-day and enjoy my life? It's not just about my career. It's not about the hustle. And that's kind of where I help them kind of every step of the way. And it's almost like the life coaching, but with the added benefit of medication optimization, the added benefit of, You want to talk about supplements? I love practicing on more of a holistic standpoint. So I love the IV wellness solutions. I love, talking about nutrition, diet, again, like the intimacy, your personal relations, your professional relations. Who's your network around you? I am not just diving into the individual. I'm diving into the entirety of the person.
So stress, sex, and money, you talk about it all.
Yep. I don't shy away from it. And this is what is this is the all-encompassing factor of this population in general.
That makes sense. I mean, those are things I think everybody can relate to, whether you're an executive or a solopreneur or a mom at home.
Yeah.
Literally, everybody has those same three things that it doesn't matter.
No. Housewife to CEO, same.
So I promised to bring you on and talk about dating.
Yeah.
And so I have never had a dating app, but clearly everybody has one. Everyone has one. And I guess the question is, one, are they a good thing? So I want to ask a professional, is a dating app a healthy thing? Is it an unhealthy thing, like in general? And then, let's start there.
I like that. Let's start there for sure. I have a very conservative approach to it. So my answer is yes and no. You need to know what your goal is and what you're using it for. If you're using it clearly just to have, the one night stand, intimate relations, just for that very reason, it's a great app because you're opening yourself up to certain aspects of, hey, I'm in this locality, I'm in this region, I desire this particular individual. And that's where these apps have really blossomed and burgeoned in popularity for that very reason, thinking about Tinder, for example. On the other side of the spectrum, these apps have been out for a very long time. And for the most part, we see successful marriages come out of them. We're thinking about like eHarmony or Match.com. And there has been really great relationships coming out of that. It's not to say that they're not great. It's another modality in today's society that is a successful means of finding your match or finding your mate. Now, the other spectrum is, and tying it into social media, there's a lot of facade around it. There's a lot of superficiality to it. So when you and I, let's say we were in a restaurant and we were single gals and we were having lunch and we see a group of men, or, we're trying to find a mate for, like eventually trying to find a connection, I should say. That connection is usually made in person, and there's some sort of verbal and nonverbal behavior to that. You form a connection with that individual. Exactly. And you feel that right away. Over a screen, over a mobile screen, over the laptop or your desktop, it's really hard to find that. And in fact, that's where the swipe modalities have been really trending and successful because our attention spans have reduced like crazy. We're thinking about TikTok, like you need to attract that potential pipeline client or lead or whomever is watching you to get that like within less than 3 seconds. So it's the same thing with the apps. If you have this superficiality to you in terms of like what you want in your connection, what you're seeing and what you're really choosing that other individual for is their appearance and their little brief bio. And that's it. And that's, to me, not enough to make a deep connection. If it starts the conversation for you and that's what you're looking for to have, again, that deep dive in, my intention, and I'm manifesting, I want to find my soul partner. This is what I want to look for in that individual. You'll eventually find that person. But if you're looking for, I want a really tall blonde and she's got to look yay, in terms of her appearance, and I want her to be in this region and I want her to be in this industry and or a professional, that's going to be really hard to find because you have a lot of competition as well.
Mm.
So it's a really, really hard, like, a thing for me to say. This is something that is really wonderful, but it is something that's another toolbox. It's another little nugget in somebody's toolbox of finding their potential soulmate, if that's what their direct is.
One of the things that I think is a massive turnoff about dating apps is no one has to have the courage to come up and start a conversation with me. And the idea that someone could send me a text and not have to face me and not even get the excitement of me saying, yes, I'd love to do that. Or thank you, I'm flattered, or any of that, like that, the connection piece and how they ask you that way. It takes a certain level of courage to even go up and ask someone, like, hey, would you like to go get lunch? Even a friend that you've already known or someone you've met at a meeting or networking or anything, another mom at the mom school or at your kid's school. It takes some courage to go up and do that. And it takes like the joy out of the interaction to do everything over our phones for me. And so I keep thinking like, maybe it helps people overcome the fear of it, but it also reduces the joy of like being asked. So I don't think I would feel as good doing that. But clearly people are feeling successful doing it that way and then they meet. And I think that one of the big complaints that I've heard from everyone I know that has a dating profile is that they basically feel like they've been scammed somehow by looking at a photo of someone that doesn't currently look like themselves. Now, I know that can't happen with everyone. There are plenty of people that, like you said, make really great matches or that even like the person maybe more than the photo. One of my friends said that about a date that she went on the other day. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like she liked his person, in person, everything better than any of his photos. And she said, and none of his photos were recent. I was like, wow, that's interesting. That's great. I love that. And so there's obviously a flip both ways. But do you think that as a society, it's great in the confidence building that we can connect without having to speak or be face to face? Or overall, is that a destruction of like what we are and how we connect? And socially, is it good or bad for our brains, for our relationship ability to build, to do this online versus do it in person?
I think that a lot of the research has shown that it has started to kind of construct this deconstruction of isolation and reduction of really meaningful human connection.
Mm.
And there's a lot of reduction in traditional means of finding relationships. So the way that maybe our parents or our grandparents found one another and married one another and the courtship of that almost is like foregone in a way. If you think about our friends and our peers and our colleagues, even working professionals, even housewives, or individuals that are really high achieving executives, a lot of them are on apps. And that's how they're trying to find like-minded individuals. So on that spectrum, I feel like that's actually a really good modality because, hey, if I'm a high functioning executive, I don't want somebody that is going to be intimidated by me. I'm female, I'm professional. I don't want somebody that is going to be like, ooh, you're the breadwinner, you make more than me potentially, or I don't like that you work this much or travel this much. For someone like that, it's a waste of time because this courtship period is long. It's lengthy, right? It's not a date or two.
Right.
It's months or years. So, and a CEO doesn't have time for that. So for that aspect, it could work and you're meeting these individuals. But on the other side of the spectrum, you're doing it behind closed doors. And my problem is you're not networking. Like you're not going out. You're not putting yourself out there. Like you said, when you're putting yourself out there in a different role, like individually, physically putting yourself in the room, you are really being yourself. You have to be a genuine person. You have to be your own authentic self. That is what's going to attract that other energy towards you, right? So in that respect, I love that. That's where I feel so strongly about making connections in that manner. And it could be peer to peer, like you said. It's not just romantic relationships I'm talking about. It could be peer to peer relationships, colleague relationships, female to female, like networking groups and things. It's all a support system that's diving in. But if we're all doing it kind of behind closed doors, it's really hard. And then you have that aspect, and I've heard this so many times, you're so right. There's like catfishing going on here.
Yeah.
This is a photo of you probably 7 or 8 years ago when, your hairstyle was like this, or you dressed in such a manner. But then there's the FOMO involved. And that's what you're feeling right now. You're feeling FOMO.
Yes.
You're feeling
I'm worried. What if I'm missing 10,000 opportunities and one of those was the right one, right?
Right. But I will say that there are really great matches that have been coming out of apps and from, these like eHarmony types of relationship applications. However, the pond that we used to be in maybe like 20 years ago before these apps kind of came out, or 20 years ago or more, the pond has turned into the ocean. And so what happens is you develop maybe a really great clear-cut connection that you really felt like good chemistry with this other individual. And you've been speaking to he or her for months, and it was a really great connection. And then all of a sudden, ghosted. And you're like, what the heck happened? And it's because that little pond, whether it was man-made or whatever, that pond turned into a huge lake, turned into an ocean. And now you have at your fingertips a huge, huge demographic of individuals that you're competing against and that you're competing with.
That makes my stomach like upside down, because in like the healthiest relationships I've ever had, I never had a question that would even be a challenge, right? You walk into a room, you feel confident, you know where your partner is without like watching them, and you can feel their energy moving around, and it feels good. Yeah. You have freedom to talk and engage and be yourself. And to think that even just the plethora of options is enough to make someone more interested in something else. And I guess that online dating also, the primary complaints I hear is that they're also talking to this many people. But one of the things I did hear recently that was really awesome was one of my girlfriends consistently hears, hey, I'm closing down my dating apps like on the second or third date. And the man is having this conversation with her. Yeah. And then on the other side of that is either a question that she will do it, or, hi, I feel comfortable enough to just tell you that and let you make a decision and let me know when you are or if you are in the future. And so it's like a proposition of such that like they're exclusive.
Like a monogamy almost proposition. I don't want polyamory. I'm pursuing this. And do you want that as well?
And that sounds very romantic. That's the equivalent of, will you be my girlfriend? Will you be my boyfriend? Yeah, like very just, I don't know.
Take my promise ring.
Yeah. And I think that would make people feel a little bit more secure in the online dating world. And then hopefully you're also seeing that behavior like, oh, their account is actually, and I feel good about mine as well. And it's not something that you're seeing pop up all of the time.
I really, that's a wonderful story, because I don't see a lot of that, unfortunately, right now. What I'm seeing is there is support on the spectrum of like, for example, let's say I'm a single woman and I'm on these dating apps and I've been on dates, and some have gone really well, some have not. Even if they're going really well, almost in the back of my mind, because I've been on 16 other dates that have been horrendous or they didn't turn out very well, I'm not closing that app because I can't trust the other individual. And so that's more and more what I'm hearing right now. My focus and my kind of like my messaging to honestly to the community and to patients is trust is your biggest foundation. Everything is built on trust. If you have this kind of like, you got to go with your heart and your gut feeling. If you feel that that individual is not providing you with 100% of their honesty and their own authenticity to you, it's something that you need to kind of consider stepping back and maybe reevaluating about that relationship.
I mean, that goes definitely not online. That's for definitely
everything.
everyone.
Right, right. That could be for everything.
That could be
Because
friendship.
I've seen where the dating app is closed and they've said that to you, yet they're DMing other girls on Instagram.
Yeah.
So,
which is kind of also a way to be dating people.
yeah.
So social media overall influences a lot of what we do today. When people are interested in dating and they're wanting to, what would be like a reasonable amount of time that they should spend like investing time in something like, oh, I'd like to be in a healthy relationship. So maybe that's for people who are in a relationship that want to have the healthiest of relationships. How much time are they spending investing in a good, healthy relationship? Then people who are interested in getting into a relationship, and or that could also include marriage.
Ooh.
What's like a great amount of time to say, you should be checking in or spending this much individual time.
Right.
And the people that do this seem to have healthier relationships.
I don't know if there's like a specific research shows that if you spend 2 hours a day with this individual, that it makes it more successful. I think that it's the quality of the time. If you're spending 10, 15 minutes with that individual, checking in with them, and it's a really meaningful phone call, and it's something where you're talking about, I'm just checking in with you. How was your day? Tell me about everything going on. It could be a divorcee and they're going through some tough times and, they're newly single and you're kind of going through the process with them. That in and of itself is you've created this chemistry and you're creating like these bonds and ties and you're almost formulating something that maybe they didn't have before. And so you're having this, again, the foundation of trust and support for one another. On the other side of the spectrum, when it's like 2-3 hours a day that you're on the phone or texting the individual, but it's not meaningful conversation, there's no quality.
Filler, insecurity.
Hey, what did you watch today? Like, hey, stuff like that. It's not meaningful in terms of, is that really going to be directed to what the end line goal is? Like thinking about a football analogy, is that going to get you to the 1 yard line, to the end zone, to the red zone, and then to the touchdown? Or is it really like, okay, this is more of a running back situation where like, okay, 1 yard, 2 yards. No, I want a Hail Mary. I want to get to the point where I really get to have a deepened connection with you. So it's hard to say how much time that takes because with every relationship, it differs.
That makes sense. I remember reading an article. So this is not factual, but I just remember reading an article and it was talking about the percentage of interactions that are like positive to negative. And I think it said something about like 7 out of 10 interactions that are positive generally makes you friendly and engaging with people that are very meaningful to you. And if you're not having at least that, out of every 10, there's 7, then, and again, don't quote me on that, but I think about that a lot when I'm engaging with people because I want the experience to be positive. But sometimes it's not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And there's also like things about dating that make it not always just like, oh, hi, I'm putting my bright, shiny foot forward. I like to have a lot of questions, like literally that we could talk about openly. And I think that people's responses to those things, maybe not online, but maybe in person, might tell you a lot about how vulnerable they might be with you or how well they might communicate about something that's uncomfortable to talk about. Or if you feel that they're being honest or just giving you the answer that you want.
Right.
Do they always have you answer first? Is there a good back and forth? Do they show genuine interest in you?
Yes.
And so, I mean, again, that could go with friends. That could go with people who you meet. That could just, people at church, people at the grocery. And then, of course, people that you have relationships with. And I always find that the people that are just willing to like have that back and forth banter
yes.
and really connect with you or share, they're like just gold.
Yeah.
They're just gold.
It's sometimes it can be a diamond in the rough. And you can feel that. And unfortunately, for some cases, it might really feel like, okay, I'm never going to find that person. There might not be ever a Prince Charming out there. They're really, what does that really mean? It's a
fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale. There's a reason why it's fictional. And we make little cartoons and storybooks out of this. But one thing that actually what you said resonated with me is now with social media, you can use it to your advantage. There's a lot of women and men out there that are in the dating pool that are like, okay, what are my triggers? What are some key words almost in a way that I can individually ask this person that I might be dating or interested in dating to kind of test out the waters to see if they have any narcissistic issues,
Ooh.
if they are somebody that might look or present themselves as charming. And then now you're like, ooh, peeling back the layers, holy smokes, that is something where I saw all of the red flags early on. And so I didn't get into the deep weeds of the relationship, thankfully. But with all of this knowledge that's out there right now, I feel like using that to people's advantage, especially when I'm working with single clients, like, here are some red flags I want you to look for. Here's green flags I want you to look for in your mate.
Wow.
What are you like? What is your intention? A lot of our peers right now they may have been divorced and may have been divorced more than once. They have kids. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
And so you're not asking for somebody to just support you. You are actually bringing somebody into the picture that might be a nurturing, supportive individual to your family now. It's a whole different ball game. And so for that respect, I'm like, you need to take a step back. You need to kind of figure out who you are as an individual. We're working on themselves and their intuition and building their trust and ingenuity before they go out and say, like, who's going to be my Prince Charming that I can just bring into the picture and that will complete me as a whole?
Ooh.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
That actually sounds incredibly intimidating. Like very intimidating. I have friends who are mothers and are entering the dating world, and I always feel like they, on some level, they're devaluing themselves. They will say, many and women will say things like, well, I have baggage now that I have to consider. And I'm like, for the right person, that is like the perfect package. It's
Right.
not a baggage at all. It's like
Yeah.
a present
Right.
to you. And you never know, some people who don't have children really want to have children or can't have children.
Right.
Maybe that's what you're looking for.
Right.
So yeah, hopefully those people find someone who really loves their kids, not just them. I think one of the primary complications of people who have children and are entering the dating field is, what is your relationship with the other partner? And so if your current partner doesn't feel safe about your relationship with the other parent and doesn't feel like they have any role except to you, then that could be a problem. Or like, where do you step in with, hey, that felt disrespectful? There's so many things that people could easily need a lot of guidance on. So tricky waters for sure.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to people that are really fishing around in the murky waters of dating anyway,
Right.
with how they're feeling about that. But hopefully they can get some guidance and feel really confident that they have all the value that everybody else has.
Absolutely.
And bonus packages. So
yeah, honestly, and think about the Brady Bunch as gushy and whatever that show used to be back in the day. Thinking about, like, fast forward to 2024 today, there are so many families now that are stepfathers, stepmothers that are now, they had to bring their biological children into the picture. And now this family that used to be one child is now 3 or 4. And so there's a lot of responsibility on that front end, but then the kids might be around the same age. I've had patients where the match was from school And
Oh, yeah.
so it was like a mother and father that were divorced and over time developed this chemistry and bond. And these children all knew one another.
Yeah,
And it
they're
was
already
so
friends.
amazing. They were
That's cool.
already friends. They were already maybe about a year or two or so apart. But how wonderful is that? I mean, those are really great stories. Love is love. Ultimately, there's a lot of trials and tribulations with that. I mean, that, again, that is a whole other subject matter and rabbit hole that I can go into. But I always am a proponent of you need to know yourself and you build yourself, and yourself is the foundation of finding that other person. The other person that you're trying to strive to find in life as your partner, in life or partner for now, is not an extension of you. You are you. That partner is there to support you and vice versa. That's it. And you evolve together, you walk in tandem, you're parallel with one another in life. And that's the mindset that needs to be shifted. Because I think right now it's like, I have this hole, I really want to meet a guy, or I feel lonely. The isolation from COVID is still existent to this day.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of this trauma is still, there, and
Yeah.
really, really kind of swayed some of the trends for dating and some of these relationship building for that very reason.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk about such a, I don't know, it's kind of a topic that people feel uncomfortable talking about. Like
Mhm.
dating,
Yeah,
relationships, it's just a thing. So I really appreciate you.
absolutely.
You're fantastic. If
Thank
people
you.
want information about how to find you in particular,
Mhm.
where do they go?
So they can go onto my website. It's www.monaaminimd.com. They can also directly contact me. I'm a solo practitioner. My office is a concierge psychiatry practice, and they can call my office and we can list that within as well.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. And I hope everybody loved this episode.
Thank you.
That has been today's episode of the Scottsdale Top Doc podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Efforts like physical therapy pay great dividends when it comes to improving the range of motion, when it comes to improving the quality of a person's life.
You know how to change the way of life of people, which is a wonderful thing to do, to know you're doing that. Because I'm sure that without your help, I can do more than I thought I ever could. It's very important to have a way of moving around. You know, maybe you're not doing much of the moving, but you're moving. And I give you an A+. So I appreciate you very much. And that's the truth.